Welcome back to the workshop, and boy, what a busy week it's been. I'm so grateful for all of the comments that you've left me after last week's episode. With the problem I was having with the bandsaw, I've had several comments and I'm so grateful to you. For example, John suggested I need a new blade. Well, that's definitely true, because the one that's in at the moment has been getting a lot of hard work on the ripping of the hard stock. Jim thought that the blade might be binding, and so I needed to splay the cut slightly. Thanks ever so much, Jim. I did spot that one, and I did use the small set square that I've got to just try and ease the cut slightly. But Bill was the first one to actually spot that the roller guide on the blade had slipped slightly. Now, with it being such uneven stock, the width of the wood varies quite a lot, and I hadn't noticed how it was getting gradually closer to the guide bearings, but the actual guide slipped. I hadn't tightened it enough, and so that was why I couldn't on that piece of wood get the cut any further. Tim also noticed that the guide had slipped, but a tip that Tim gave me is could I use a higher feather board so that I'm holding it nearer the middle of the piece of wood. Now, that's possible. I'm not quite sure, as he demolishes the workshop again, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that with the feather boards that I've got, but I will bear that one in mind, Tim. But then Tim did make a very valid suggestion. Rather than put the fourth side through the thicknesser, take the rough side off on the table saw. That way the whole piece won't tip and give me an even worse finish than I started with. So I'm certainly going to take you up on that one, Tim. Thanks ever so much, and very grateful too for all of your support. Up to nearly 170 subscribers now, and I'm very grateful for the support that you're giving me. But just another thing that I just wanted to mention as well, you remember going back a couple of episodes there, I was doing the extension to the meter cupboard, and I was having problems with screws, because the screws that came with the small brass hinges, they were solid brass, yes, but they were Posi or Phillips heads, and they hadn't been machined correctly, and so a lot of the screw grips hadn't been formed properly, therefore I couldn't tighten them up properly. So what I've gone and done, I've actually bought the smallest size possible. Now this is from screwsline.co.uk. I'll put a link to that in the comments below, but all sorts of screws and in all sorts of materials. So I've gone and bought the smallest possible, so that's 2 gauge, and we're talking there about 2 millimeters in diameter and 1/4 of an inch deep or long. Now those are actually a little too small for what I wanted, but it's given me an idea of what I now need for those hinges. So they're all solid brass, they're countersunk heads, and they are just slot heads, so they are much better finish. So I'll be getting some more longer number 2 gauge screws for future use, but I just thought I'd mention that you might like to have a look at them when you get a chance. So let's come to the job at hand. Now this is the stock that I'm working with, and I've got 7 lengths of somewhere between 25 and 19 mil thick, so those are going to be machined first. Then I've got the rest of the stock, they are anywhere between 18 and 17 mil thick, and so once I've got these down to this size, then I can put them all through the machine. So the idea is just to get everything down to 15 mil roughly, then I can, taking Tim's suggestion on the table saw, just take this rough edge off and just then tidy everything up on the planer just to make everything smooth. So that's the plan of action for today. We'll see how far we get. Oh yes, and I forgot to mention, with the screws I've gone and bought myself a pack of 1mm drill bits. So that's going to give me the ability to drill small pilot holes for these number 2 gauge screws. So apparently there's only one manufacturer for the UK that does these, that's Erbauer, and I got these from Screwfix. Again, I'll pop a little link to the bit in the comments below. Let's get on with the job. There we go. So that's the first lot taken down to about 17, so they're all roughly now the same thickness. So it's now taking the lot down to 15, and that's gone pretty well. But just looking at the bag for the dust extraction, that just from what I've done so far on these 7 pieces, that's half full, so I reckon I'm going to get through several bags this afternoon. But that's the whole idea. At least I'm not knee deep in shavings. But let's carry on. So that's got everything down to 15.3, and I'm not going to quibble about that 0.3 of a millimetre. So everything is now down to the correct thickness. And you remember when I was having the problem last week with the board that wouldn't go through the bandsaw? You remember I had to basically split it. Well, there's the result. It's down to correct thickness, but there's that big chunk in the middle where the fibres have split. I'm still going to be able to use that because I can basically cut it there and use the two halves. So all in all, I'm very pleased with the result. So, and I'm also pleased because I've only actually filled the sack on the vacuum system 3 times. So not as much as I thought. And again, very thankful for the beefed up vacuum system because there's very little ends up on the floor. Most of it ends up in the sack itself. So just tidy up and then I can decide how I'm going to be cutting the fourth side to all these planks, and tidy up so that I've got usable stock to actually joint. So let me tidy up and I'll see what's what next. Right, now I'm only making this a test piece just to see how I need to be working, but if I'm thinking correctly, then one of the sides needs to be on the table. The already planed edge needs to be against the face, and I'm cutting the rough side at the moment. Now this piece I know tapers. This is the wide end, that's the narrow end, so I'm putting the narrow end in first, and I've adjusted the height of the blade. All I'm going to be doing is taking one pass just to level everything off, taking the minimum off as I can, and I'll see how that goes and see what sort of working length I need for next time. So let's just make this pass. So that's a good pass on that one. I just want to double check. This narrow end, that is now 148 and 148, so that's parallel, and that has left quite a good edge, so I probably won't need to stick that through a planer. So good. But that means I will need to give myself quite a lot of working length because of the length of some of these boards. So that's for me to figure out next time. But in the meantime, thanks for coming along with me on this journey. And as I said at the outset, I'm very grateful for all of the comments that you've made. I really do appreciate everything that you are helping me with, and I'll see you next time.